While it's big, we only have one Earth. How are you using it? Today on Public TV 13's Media Meet, we'll hear from Aboriginal Australian delegates about the synergy between science and tradition, the idea of bringing two cultures and the past together while preserving the planet. That's next on Public TV 13's Media Meet. Hello and welcome to Media Meet. I'm your host, Sonia Chrisman. My guests today are Victor Steffensen. He is the manager and co-founder of the Traditional Knowledge Revival Pathways, or TKRP, and Barry Hunter and John Hunter, both Indigenous land management facilitators, are also here today. And we thank you all. Long travels, of course, to get here from Australia overseas, a 14-hour difference, in time, but at the same time, really, great thing that you guys did come here, and we really appreciate that. First of all, I'm going to start with Barry Hunter and John Hunter, not related, but you are both Indigenous land management facilitators. Can you tell us, I'm going to start with you, John, what exactly is an Indigenous land management facilitator?
An Indigenous land management facilitator is a position which is at a strategic level, works at a strategic level, and works in land management and community development. We work with a number of regions in Queensland. It's one of the states of Australia, but our positions are located throughout Australia, throughout the states. There's 13 of us nationally.
Coming to this area, I don't know if you've noticed or not, we have a deep-rooted culture up here, whether it's Finnish, Native American. We really have a lot of culture in this area. And then when you start talking about modern science, preserving the planet, those type of things, everybody wants to, but at the same time, how do you, keep up with tradition and at the same time get people on board to some of these different community things that you do, John?
It can be difficult because when you work in the mainstream, there's certain expectations. But I think when we work with grassroots communities through the regional facilitators, we always are mindful that there are certain protocols in our communities, in our Indigenous communities, that need to be respected and understood by the wider community. And that helps us maintain a balance and helps us remember that we work for the community. We work for grassroots community, and those benefits are there for everybody, because community is bigger than black, white or Brindle. Community is about people working together. And everybody in the community cares about country, because if we've got a healthy country, then we've got healthy people.
That's a very good point. Barry Hunter, you're also an Indigenous land management facilitator. What would you say on a daily basis it consumes a lot of your time on your job, would you say?
Probably the big part is obviously staying in touch with people. The region that I cover is probably the size of the state of Michigan, but a lot less people. There's probably around 19,000 people, and 13,000 of those 19,000 identify as Indigenous. So some of the communities that I work with are pretty remote in terms of not just communication but travel. Some of the communities you have to drive up to 8 hours. So yeah, it's definitely staying in touch with people, and within each of these communities, they've got projects and or programs that sort of they've either applied for or worked with them to get the project in there. So being able to stay in touch and knowing how those projects are going on a daily basis is a big task. So yeah, that'd be the big part of it. But then the other aspect is as John mentioned, being able to facilitate those aspirations on the ground and provide support to those aspirations in the communities, and that support being either seeking financial assistance or linking up different expertise within the communities or outside of the communities with the communities for those projects. So that's where a big part of the work is on a day-to-day basis.
What would be an example of one of the programs or projects that you're currently working on right now?
Well, I guess it's timely for me to talk about the Traditional Knowledge Revival Pathways project that Victor Steffensen will speak on a bit later in the show. And my role in that over the last few years has been to match up where the Australian government dollars or investment is and provide that as a mechanism to support the on-ground outcomes, and the on-ground outcomes, as Victor will talk about, include having a community base that will record knowledge and work with the elders around recording of that important information, putting that information into a database, and then the next stage that I'm interested in is implementing that information on the ground to provide natural resource management outcomes.
Victor, you've been so patient waiting, as well. You're here to talk about the traditional knowledge revival pathways that you founded, basically, and you manage now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I founded the project with two Kuka Taipan elders, which is Dr. Tommy George and the late Dr. George Musgrave, who we lost 2 years ago. But the two elders were very respected elders in the Cape York region of North Queensland, and basically was respected right across with all the clan groups. And with initiating this particular project using technologies, video cameras, and being out on country and recording the knowledge firsthand, and for them to be the researchers under their own terms, really got the attention of other communities that were related communities in that region, and really was an instant bond of trust and undertaking a methodology in recording and implementing traditional knowledge.
I saw some of those video clips on your website. Is that an example of what you're talking about then, where
Yeah.
you use the technology to show some of these projects?
That's right. That's one of just one of the many outputs that can be developed from this project. The first basic principle is to record that knowledge before it's lost, and that is the emergency. And it's a real urgency to start supporting our elders, because they do have a library, a walking library in one sense, of knowledge that's thousands of years of experience that's been handed down. And the main concern is the gap between our youth and the elders, and the youth aren't picking that up. And people see that as a problem, and wow, it's just an Indigenous problem, but that is valuable knowledge that that Indigenous people have in terms of having a real recognition and a real contribution to mainstream management. And I guess it's a real important step to revive people culturally and their own self with the problems that we have socially also with Indigenous groups.
What are some of those social problems that you're talking about? Because I think I understand some of those problems are actually kind of similar to what we're experiencing here.
That's right. Like Australia's 200 years behind America, and we're really identical in a lot of ways with the Native American people here. Not just culturally with the relationship with land, as John mentioned earlier, but also with the problems that we've had socially with alcohol, and a lot of problems that have been socially casted over the communities. And I guess the idea for having a grassroots methodology is that we can provide our own solutions into reviving our people and amending these problems, while also showing a value for the broader community. And that's really what we need to see for our young people. And our young people need to see for our elders to be respected broadly as well, and seeing our knowledge being of value, for that.
Mm-hmm. How could non-Indigenous people then, I guess, learn from what you're doing? I mean, do you get them involved with the process?
Yeah, well, I guess that's the whole point of the project. Of course, the main one is to record the knowledge and and safeguard that knowledge, but all the outputs of this work, in terms of the websites, education, doing documentaries and film, putting in the land management like Barry mentioned before, and getting projects on the ground happening, and showing the practical outcomes of environmental management from these knowledge systems. That is really is for the broader community, and once again it is showing that Indigenous people have a value. And with the way that media has really portrayed Indigenous people in our country, has really been a negative sort of.
Is it possible for the two to coincide? Because I know here in this country there's always that struggle between preserving culture and moving forward with progress. Is it possible for the two to exist?
Yes, absolutely. I think it is.
I mean, is it realistic? Maybe it's possible, but is it realistic to get there?
It also involves changing of attitudes on both sides. For instance, like a lot of park managers and in the region that we're in, there are very big reserves or national parks, and those managers of those national parks see themselves as owners rather than managers. So being able to work within that and manage within that, and indeed listen as well. And like I said, that's got to happen on both sides. But for that to come together, there are a number of examples that we can provide already that is showing that. But it's got to get better, you know. Like I think the more working together and the more opportunities to pull out the knowledge and tie it together is a key thing.
I know you haven't been here that long, but at the same time, from what you've heard from people talking here and the reason why you're invited here, what do you think we can start doing here in North America, or at least in this Upper Great Lakes region? What can we start doing now? I'm going to turn that over to you, Victor. I mean,